have to say that this is a day of joy for Finns. We have been working for this NATO membership now more than 10 months and first waited for Hungary to ratify our application, and now we got the good news from Turkey last night, and hopefully Mr. Stoltenberg is already digging the hole for a new flag pole in Brussels.
Hey there, I'm Andrew Chang. Welcome to About That. Finland joining NATO may be one of the alliance's most consequential moments in recent history.
This is a historic week. Tomorrow we will welcome Finland as the 31st member of NATO, making Finland safer and our alliance stronger.
So let's break this down. You know, it goes without saying, it's a big shift for Finland, which, you know, has a history of not joining alliances, military neutrality, and its geography is a big reason for that. It's sandwiched between Russia and the West, has been on good terms with both, but geography has everything to do with why it may have felt no choice but to finally pick a side. Now, to understand why Finland joining the NATO military alliance is such a big deal, first understand that NATO's whole reason for coming into existence, like 70 plus years ago, was to provide a collective defense against the Soviet Union. Now, well, you know, just take a look at Finland's border with Russia. It's massive. More than 1,300 kilometers of, you know, thick forest, marshland, lakes, basically terrain that's hard for tanks to cross. So militarily useful to have, but just the sheer size of it, it's more than doubles the length of NATO's collective border with Russia. And just look at the region in 1990, just after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Russia's sphere of control and influence pushed directly into Europe. But today, that map looks a lot different. NATO's power has expanded, and its continual encroachment has been a problem for Vladimir Putin, who has called NATO one of his country's most serious external threats. And Finland isn't exactly lacking in military firepower itself. It's actually pretty significant. It's had to be, thanks to that long border with Russia. It's one of the few countries in Europe that still conscripts its own people, with a wartime strength of 280,000 soldiers and 900,000 in reserve. It has something like 1,500 artillery weapons, which include, 700 howitzer guns, 700 heavy mortars, 100 rocket launcher systems. And for context, that's more artillery firepower than Poland, Germany, Norway, and Sweden combined. That's good news for NATO. It's already the world's biggest military alliance. It includes Canada, the United States, the UK, most of the European Union, but it's bad news for Russia.
We won't move 1 inch towards the east, they told us in the 1990s. And what happened? They deceived us. They brazenly tricked us.
Russia's pretext for invading Ukraine in the first place was a fear that NATO was slowly but surely pushing its way onto Russia's front doorstep.
When President Putin had as a declared goal of the invasion of Ukraine to get less NATO. He wanted less NATO along his borders. He wanted to close NATO's door, no more NATO membership for any more countries in Europe. He's getting exactly the opposite.
So, boy, do I have questions for William Alberk. William is the Director of Strategy, Technology, and Arms Control at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. And very nice of you to join us from Berlin. Hello.
Hello.
So William,
on the show.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. So first question, why would Finland do this, first of all? Because on some level, it must seem a little bit like poking the bear, and the bear that you've been sort of happily coexisting with for decades.
Well, I think that's a little bit overreading the relationship between Finland and Russia, where I think Finland has felt like it's been hoaxed by Russia pretty severely, fairly frequently through its history. But most recently, when Finland watched Russia annex Crimea in 2014, it really did awaken tremendous feelings of anxiety in Finland. Finland at the end of World War II actually had to sue for peace on Soviet terms, which included giving up territory. And Soviet Union and Russia has made no illusions about their desire to restore imperial grandeur, President Putin has made that one of his big talking points, that he wants to restore the Russian Empire. And that sets off waves of fear through Helsinki. So when they watch Crimea get annexed, they have memories of war with the Soviet Union and conflict with Russia, and they want to protect themselves. So for the Finns, this was the perfect moment while Russia is completely bogged down in this massive war, while its conventional forces are being torn to shreds by the Ukrainians, while forces that are normally based near the Finnish border are down in Ukraine. This was the right moment for them to join the alliance. They knew this was a historic moment. They had tried many other kinds of engagement with the European Union, with bilateral relationships with the United States and the UK, with multilateral relationships like NORDEFCO, but none of these rose to the level of being able to make sure that Finland is secure. And NATO membership was it. And it was Russia's aggression against Ukraine that just awakened these historic memories of fear and pushed the Finns into the alliance.
You know, I'm curious, on the flip side, does Finland become a weak spot for NATO? Because, you know, what sort of underpins the treaty itself, of course, is mutual defense, right? Attack one, attack all.
Right. Right. Well, actually, the interesting thing about Finland is that it is in peacetime already capable of defending itself. They have very advanced fighter jets, currently F-18s. They're rotating those out to buy 64 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. They're just a very highly capable, highly trained military ready to defend its borders. So them joining the alliance, while the actual border territory is very large, Finland's ability to defend itself without NATO's help is already remarkable. Plus, you add in all that artillery and aircraft, and the fact that Finland's now working together with the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Danes on a sort of joint concept for air defense. You're going to see a lot of firepower being added to the alliance. And for the first time, really, the ability to defend Estonia, because from Finnish territory, longer-range fires, longer-range cruise missiles are going to be able to stop Russia's ability to mass force. Plus, with the Finnish forces exercising, like if they just move 100,000 troops near St. Petersburg, 100,000 troops up by the Kola Peninsula, Russia's going to have to spread their forces very thin just to cover themselves, just to defend against any potential counteroffensives. And that means that their ability to overmatch NATO forces in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania really kind of goes away. And I think it introduces a level of stability into what was you know, a kind of risky defense for the Baltics. It was always very difficult to get in there. Finland makes it infinitely easier.
So that's really interesting to hear you say that, because there had been a part of me that wasn't quite sure what this meant for the stability or instability of the region, right? Because you talk about Finland's capability to defend itself. You talk about how, you know, the war in Ukraine itself may have been born out of this insecurity on Russia's part, that NATO's sphere of influence has been expanding. And so you have Finland joining an even broader military alliance. And I just can't help but wonder if this all somehow is less about deterrence and more about making the situation more dangerous. But tell me otherwise.
Well, so it really depends on how you see Russia. I mean, I think Russia moved into Ukraine because it does not want any of the countries on its borders to have an independent foreign policy. And also that Putin himself wants to restore empire. I think if that war had gone more quickly, if Russia had succeeded in its initial war plan and seized Kiev within days, I think they would have moved next to annex Belarus. I think they've already taken a lot of moves there in terms of changing Belarus's constitution. Now you hear Putin saying he's going to base nuclear weapons on Belarusian territory. So he's doing this sort of slow motion annexation of Belarus. I think that would have gone much quicker if Ukraine had fallen within days. And so honestly, I think Finland joining the alliance actually removes an area of mischief that the Russians want to play. The Russians want to scare us. They want us to limit ourselves because we're intimidated by them. And so by having Finland in the alliance, this takes an entire area that was very permissive for Russia to cause mischief into an area where Russia is going to want stability.
Hey, fascinating conversation. William Elbrook, very good to get your insights. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me on.